You raise the concerns there. They ignore it in both. They haven't addressed any of these concerns. Is that your testimony?
Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for convening this hearing. Thanks to each of the witnesses for being here. Mr. Salapore, let me just start with you. I just want to back up and make sure I understand your testimony because it seems extraordinary to me. And I'm reading the letters that you've submitted from your attorney when you first contacted the FAA, when you contacted the committee. So my understanding is you worked on both the 787 and the 7777, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you identified major safety concerns with both of these lines, should
Yes,
I say?
sir.
And you identified these to your superiors.
Yes, sir. I have written many memos time after time that we can provide.
Over a period of years, I think.
Yeah, this is like 3 years. For the 787, it's been 3 years of effort.
And so your concerns, who knew about your concerns? How far up the chain do you know that they went?
I have gone as high as Mark Stockton and Lisa Fall, who's the vice president.
The vice president of the company.
Yes.
So they were and are aware of these major safety concerns. And this is what you do for a living. I mean, you're an engineer, right? I mean,
I'm an engineer. I went to quality about 3-4 years ago. And when you put your quality hat, we are the eyes and ears of the public for the safety of the airplane. That's how I feel about our job. And so I have, when I see concerning information or concerning, let's say, production issues, then it is our responsibility to make sure that, if we are causing the airplane to have increased risk factors, our job is to eliminate those risk factors.
Are these planes safe?
Right now, I would not, it's like an earthquake. The big earthquake is coming, but when that hits the building that, let's say if you're talking of a building, have to be prepared to accommodate that type of a, let's say, shakeup. It has to be built properly. Right now, from what I've seen, the airplanes are not being built per spec and per requirement.
So your testimony is the 787 line and the 777 line are you think are not.
Well,
not safe.
they are doing stuff that increases the risk factors. Okay, when you increase the risk factors, it's not just one. You are doing stress concentrations. That those stress concentrations, like breaking a paper clip, you do it once or twice, it doesn't break, but it breaks at some time. As the plane gets older, all of these things that you took, you said it's not a safety issue, it becomes a safety issue.
And the company's response to you was to threaten you?
Threaten you, sideline you, transfer you.
You raised concerns about the 787, and so they transferred you to the 7777, right?
Well, yes. Initially, they just cut me off of all the meetings. They took my name out, and then so I was just doing nothing. I wasn't informed of what. Then they transferred me, and they do it pretty stealthy. Oh, we have a job over here. We want you to go over there. So they move you down there, and, I come from like 40 years of engineering background. So when I see, and I've taken a lot of stress classes, even though I'm not a specialist on that, but when there's a problematic area that you see, you can recognize.
So I just want to make sure I got the sequence right. So you raise these concerns, you get on the 787, you get transferred over to the 777, you raise the concerns there. They ignore it in both. They haven't addressed any of these concerns. Is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
And at some point, they start to threaten you. You're talking about your boss calling you on your personal phone and berating you. And when did that start?
Well, that started right after when I said, we have made over 300 plus airplanes. We still don't know how to put the load and sell. What I mean by that, if you build in an airplane, build in a house, it's like, put in the foundation. We have made over 300 airplanes. We still changing our process, like build the foundation to put the airplanes. We are struggling with that because they have changed the process, from stable to unstable situation. They're not building the same datums that we were building. So you're causing your own problem, but you don't want to admit it. Just force fit the problem force fit the misaligned holes and everything else and move on. And that's what they have been doing. And that's what I have brought up to their attention. I told my boss that I said in the report, I said, we have made 300 plus airplanes. That should have been more than adequate for us to resolve these things. All the problems that we've had, we put Band-Aid over Band-Aid to resolve the problems, and Band-Aid over Band-Aid doesn't cover it. Maybe we need to consider some engineering fundamentals with a little bit of GD&T to figure out what the problem is. And right after that, he came back to my desk, and he like I said, he made the threat, and then after that, he says, are you in or are you out?
Meaning what? Are you in and are you out with Boeing? I mean, are you going to be a good citizen and keep your mouth shut? Was that the implication?
That's how I can interpret that. He would walk by me and he said, you better, then he said, I want you to write it in writing. Tell me, are you in or are you out?
Put it in writing whether or not you were going to...
I'm in or out, and what that means, are you going to just shut up?
Right.
That's only
that would be in. If you wanted to be in, you needed to be quiet. You needed to stop this. Don't say anything more. Certainly don't tell the public.
That's how I interpreted it. But he told me to write it in writing, and I'm trying to write it. And there was 10 emails, just because I haven't received your email on this. Send it to me, and this and that.
So then he's pressuring you. I mean,
then he's pressuring you, and then his manipulation even got further than that. I'm trying to take a class on my own time that I have to flex the time. He wouldn't let me do that. I have a doctor's appointment. He cancels my doctor appointment at the same day. I mean, different manipulating different things to retaliate, to make your life miserable. And then, I started talking to go somewhere else. You just try to escape from that because this is hell, that I was subjected to. And then he threatens you with that. And really, with my background, I've had some, it's really has made me where 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm waking up with somebody stabbing me. I'm still receiving psychological help to just get back on normal.
Well, it is unbelievable to me that in the midst of this safety crisis at this corporation, that what they're doing is threatening their own engineers, whose job it is to help identify potential safety concerns. And rather than saying, you know what, you've got a point, we need to maybe do something about this, they're telling you to hide it, they're reassigning you, they're threatening you, they're trying to shut you up. In the meantime, I noticed this guy, Dave Calhoun, I think he's the CEO. I guess he's leaving at the end of the year. I wonder how much he's getting paid. I bet it's a lot.
Yes, it's a lot more than my pay grade.
I bet it's a lot more than your paycheck.
Yeah.
I bet it's a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this hearing. I think we're just scratching the surface here, but this is extraordinary. It's just extraordinary. Thank you.
I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Giving us the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Senator Hawley. And again, I just want to say I could not agree more with the points that have been made about the need for continuing investigation by our subcommittee, as well as by the FAA and the Department of Justice. And I'm anticipating we'll have strong bipartisan consensus about the next steps that we will take. But we're going to have another round of questioning. It's going to be shorter than I would like, because we have a deadline for being in our chairs in the United States Senate on the floor for a completely unrelated purpose. But I want to kind of begin where Senator Hawley ended. Mr. Salpour, in your testimony, you told us that since 2021, multiple colleagues have told you about sharing your concerns. Most of them have not come forward. Why?
It's the fear. I mean, if you think of how much problem I have created, by coming up with my, being persistent about talking about the defects and everything else. Ever since the space shuttle O-rings, that has really put a mark on me. That thing should not have happened, but it happened because of the faulty engineering. And that's exactly what we have here, is we have faulty engineering that, they're trying to shove on our throats to just say, hey, whatever we do, it's okay. From one side, they put reports that it says it's not okay. From other side, when they violate it, they try to whitewash the influence.
Whitewashing,
Whitewashing
concealment.
the spec to say it's not important for the spec. The spec, if we don't meet it, it's not that big of a deal. Let's just push the airplanes out. And then the attitude of the people for, like I said, not being receptive, because of the threats or anything else. That's because of that people haven't come forward.
You've been very careful in the way that you have phrased the potential danger here. You've talked about the increased risk.
Yes.
One could compare it to something a little bit like Russian roulette. We never know exactly
when it's going to happen,
when or where or how it's going to happen, but fatigue building and the potential vulnerability of that fuselage to tearing apart is a risk that has been increased. And it's a risk that should never have been increased.
Absolutely.
And yet these processes are continuing, are they not?
Yes, sir. From what I know, it's continuing. And right now, Boeing is coming back and really, remember, whatever they put out there, they say that everything is okay because they never learn from their mistakes. That's what the really significant thing that I want to take from this is that they never learn. It's like a lie. When you say one lie, you have to lie 10 more times to cover that lie. Hey, we made a mistake, let's correct it and move on. But that's not what's happening.
You've referred to numerous memos that you've written. I have one of them, which is a 2021 memo. The recipient of it has been deleted, but the memo speaks volumes, in my view. And one part of it, one sentence, I think, is kind of a coda for the lesson that Boeing should have learned. And I'm quoting, "Kicking me out of the program because I am raising safety concerns over the unintended consequences of the increased fit-up forces and potential escapements as a result does not help anybody." It does not help anybody. It doesn't help Boeing.
No.
At all. And again, this focus on stock price, on quarterly profit, on money over safety is a bad investment. It is malpractice beyond simply a broken safety culture. The expert panel of the FAA said something that I thought was pretty telling. Quote, "A safety culture is not something that springs up ready-made from near-death experience. Rather, it emerges gradually from the persistent and successful application of practical and down-to-earth measures, like giving you a bonus for your courage and your insights, rather than, in effect, threatening and penalizing you."
Yes, sir.
Dr. Pruchnicki, am I correct in that kind of observation about safety culture, that it has to be the result of persistent, step-by-step, down-to-earth actions by management that is really committed to safety, not just in word, but in deed, and it has to put its money where its mouth is?
No, you're exactly right. And this is part of the 4 parts of a safety culture, that you do have these reward systems in place, and you are proud when people come forward like this, and you embrace that and you celebrate that. And there's many different ways you can do that. Various companies can do this. But if I may take this time to just add one thing very quickly, is one part of a healthy safety culture is that the accountability goes all the way to the top of the company, all the way to the CEO. And when I go to help companies, with their safety culture problems, I talk to CEOs. And one of the questions I ask them is, how much time do you spend weekly with your safety department? Because different companies might spend time with their marketing people, their finance people, and all their money people. And what I find across the board is they don't spend time with their safety people. Yet they say they're accountable and they sign documents they're accountable. And most of the time they'll tell me, well, this person meets with them or whomever. That is not accountability to the top. And I tell them that, well, if you have time to meet with marketing and your finance people, then you should have time to meet with your safety people weekly. And if I had time to talk to Boeing, I'd be fascinated to know how many times per week their CEO people actually talk to their safety people. That shows accountability. It would be an interesting answer to that question.
So deans of business schools across the country and CEOs of corporations, big and small, are you listening? Will you take a lesson from Boeing's experience?
Yeah, because if they're not doing this, they're wrong. Flat out. And we've seen this time and time again with accidents. And I go all over the world and I help companies straighten this out. It's flat out.
I'm going to yield to Senator Johnson.
So let me just underscore, from my own manufacturing background, I think the key to a safety system, quality system, is accountability. In my little plastics manufacturing plant, every roll of plastic that went out had the operator's name on the name tag, on the roll tag. If that was rejected, we knew exactly who produced that, who approved it. And so accountability is crucial, which takes me back to the 737 MAX and the deferred prosecution agreement. First of all, I want some clarity. Was it or was it not the MCAS system that caused that crash?
The MCAS system, Senator, was obviously played a significant role. So did the lack of pilot training. But as Mr. Jacobson has said, there was other factors, and our analysis, my analysis, shows that those airplanes also had manufacturing defects that triggered the MCAS software.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yeah.
So what were those other defects? I mean, was it the sensor? I mean, only having one sensor was part of that system, though. But
well, the sensor, as Mr. Pearson has talked about, the sensor showed problems. The original sensor on the Lion Air airplane showed a lot of manufacturing defects when it was examined. What I found curious was after the Ethiopian crash, they said the sensor was taken off by a bird. They had no evidence for that, none whatsoever, but they concluded that it was the bird that did it. And so I think it's much more plausible and likely that it was an electrical fault of some sort, either arcing or something like that.
so of all the troubling testimony that I've read here leading up to this hearing and what I've heard here today, probably the most troubling is the fact that Boeing did not notify regulators of this significant change in the MCAS system. I mean, would you agree with that?
I would. I think both crashes would not have happened if they've been fully transparent and forthcoming with the design of
So we come back to accountability.
Yes.
Has anybody been held accountable for concealing that from the FAA? I mean, 300 some lives were lost. Again, my condolences to those family members of those lives were lost. This was beyond negligence. This is an overt act. And nobody has been held accountable in any way, shape, or form, financially, losing their job, criminally held liable.
Look, we've been dancing around an issue here that, quite frankly, being a systems engineer, I design a lot of automation and the interaction between human and automation. And what they did is quite obvious. They snuck the MCAS system through the certification process. Period. It's that simple. But they did that over money, sir.
Is that or was that criminal? Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a prosecutor. Is that criminal? Do we have laws on the books?
I can't answer
that type of what's the right word? Not evasion. I mean, was that criminal behavior? Should somebody been held liable criminally?
I can't answer if that's criminal, but as a cognitive engineer, I can tell, and I know how the certification process works, and I know how this accident works. They snuck it through the process, and it was all about money. It was all about getting those airplanes to Southwest, and it was all about money, and that's why those people died.
Has the deferred prosecution agreement been made public, or is that sealed?
I'm not aware if it's been made or not.
It has been made public, Senator, and it's an absolute, probably the most embarrassing thing in my career I've seen is how those families were treated. And that deferred prosecution agreement should never have happened. It was absolutely criminal that they did that. It was just heart-wrenching.
So who's in charge of that deferred prosecution? Who agreed to that?
That's the Department of Justice.
Let me just intervene, since I am a former United States attorney and a federal prosecutor. The Department of Justice deferred prosecution agreement is public. In fact, I was very critical of it at the time it was reached. And I've urged since then that the Department of Justice investigate whether, in fact, it has been violated. And I think the ranking member raises a very pertinent and important question. Mr. Pearson has raised it as well. He's presented evidence that the Department of Justice should consider through the FBI. We have brought to the Department of Justice's attention evidence that should be considered. They're going to have to make a judgment. We can't, because we're not prosecutors. But accountability
And that is the reason I'm going down this line of questioning, is accountability all along the process. You know, within the company, within their quality system, their top management, but then the FAA, and then Department of Justice, when they see the evidence, not doing anything about it. And again, I'll go back to the reality of the fact that we all want Boeing to succeed, that we don't want to think that there are conditions in these planes that should really force regulators to ground these planes, what that would do to our economy, what that would do to people's lives. I mean, that's just a reality. It's an awful reality, but that's what we're all facing. I think that's what's driving the lack of accountability. People don't want to be held accountable because people don't want to take the actions that might be required here. I think
Senator,
that's just an awful reality.
I just want to emphasize again that the airlines play a huge role in this, right? They obviously want airplanes. They need airplanes to do their, what they want to do, but they have a very much a responsibility to make sure those planes are safe. I'll just give you an example. We did an analysis, and in Alaska Airplanes, we did it. We produced this. We published this thing in September 2023. They had 53 brand new MAX airplanes. We found over 1,200 aircraft system malfunction reports that they had submitted to the FAA, 1,200 on 53 brand new planes within 2 years old. And I'm not talking tray tables or headrests. I'm talking the systems that Mr. Jacobson's been talking about. So we need to make sure that those things are investigated and resolved, and they're supposed to be.
Which is why I've reached out to the airlines. I've talked to a couple CEOs. We need to talk to their pilots. We need to get their mechanics. We need all these people talking together. Just individual hearings aren't going to do it. I mean, this requires a full-blown investigation with all these people being interviewed, people feeling free they can come before us with whistleblower protection, either staying anonymous or provide whatever protection we can. Again, we need a lot of information. We need a lot of witnesses. We have an awful lot of information to uncover and discover here, a lot of truth to be exposed. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing.